On June 18th, Ecuador announced that it would suspend a visa waiver agreement with China effective July 1st, 2024. The statement said that the authorities found that about 50% of the Chinese nationals who entered Ecuador didn't leave the country through the normal channels, or within the 90 days allowed by the visa waiver agreement. So where have all the Chinese gone? In fact, Ecuador has been the most popular destination for Chinese in recent years, one of the only two countries in South America that grant visa-free entry to Chinese nationals. They use Ecuador as their first stopover on their way north to the US. This dangerous smuggling journey is called zhouxian, a new term that sprang up in mainland China during the outbreak. It means walk the route, literally referring to the phenomena of Chinese entering the US through its southwestern border. The phenomenon became popular in the early 2020s. The fact that Ecuador will no longer allow Chinese nationals visa-free access to the country will undoubtedly cut off the springboard for them to the US. So Ecuador will no longer grant visa-free access to Chinese. Does it mean that the era of walking the route is over? Today, we are going to Ecuador. I heard that Ecuador will begin to cancel the visa-free policy for Chinese in July, so I don't know what it's going to be like when arriving in Ecuador. When I go to customs, I'll ask what the policy is.
No, la segunda vez.
Segunda vez, ¿de dónde viene?
De China.
¿Por cuánto tiempo se va a quedar ahora?
2 semanas.
¿Cuánto?
2 semanas.
2 semanas. Viene en Araches, ¿verdad? De Lima.
Sí, de Lima.
¿Motivo?
Para participar en un congreso médico. Disculpa, tengo una consulta. Dice que a partir de julio, ¿cómo se llama? No.
Necesita visa.
Sí, necesita visa para los chinos.
Sí, a partir del 1 de julio del 2024 ya necesita una visa de los ciudadanos chinos.
Ah, ya, pero con visa de Estados Unidos se puede entrar.
No, tiene que tener usted su visa. No le sirve ni la residencia, ni la visa americana, nada. Usted tiene que tener una visa ecuatoriana.
Ah, ya.
Podrá entrar.
Ya, pero ¿por qué motivo se canceló esa política?
Porque ha habido mucha afluencia de los ciudadanos que han tratado de cruzar de Ecuador.
I just arrived at the hotel. It's still raining. Once I am in Ecuador, I feel a bit out of breath when I arrive in Quito. Maybe it's because of the altitude. I have checked for you today. It won't be very convenient to come to Ecuador in the future, especially for those who work and live here. You'll have to use your Chinese passport to apply for a visa at the Ecuador consulate. It will take a lot of days and cost money. How can I say? It will be more troublesome to come to Ecuador in the future. According to US government data, the number of Chinese coming to the US via the south border has skyrocketed in 2023. The US border officials apprehended more than 37,000 Chinese nationals at the southern border, 10 times as many as the year before. What makes so many Chinese take the risk of going on a dangerous journey? According to the New York Times, these Chinese are afraid that if China's economy deteriorates further, they will become impoverished and they don't see a future for themselves or their children in their own country. In Xi Jinping's China, anyone can be targeted by the state. If you are a Christian, a Muslim, a Uyghur, a Tibetan, or a Mongolian, you are in trouble. If you are a worker protesting against your employer's unpaid wages, a homeowner protesting against a developer's delay in delivering a home, a student who bypassed the firewall on Instagram, or a Communist Party cadre caught reading a banned book, you're in trouble.
其实走线的路上，很多人问过我这个问题：中国经济那么好。
Many people have asked me this question when walking the route. The economy in China is good. Why do you want to leave China? I told them about those dark stories from China that they had never heard of. I googled the news to show them. They came to understand it, especially the people from Afghanistan who speak relatively better English, and I could have a conversation with them. In fact, there are so many reasons. Things that have happened in China, like the Suzhou chained woman incident in China, the blank paper movement, the Urumqi fire, and the re-education camps in Xinjiang. In particular, the case of Pastor Wang Yi has impacted me the most because as a Christian, my room for survival has been constantly squeezed. I was arrested right after Thanksgiving in 2020 and locked up in the detention center for 4 months. At the end of 2020, I attended a church event. When I was heading home from the church, I encountered a police inspection on the way. They accused me of not cooperating, so they arrested me on the charge of obstruction of official duties. I ended up being locked up in a detention center for 4 months. It shocked me the most. It's quite different when this kind of iron fist hits me personally compared to watching it happen to others. I ask myself why I can't have the freedom to go to church, push for the religious freedom according to my conscience. Why can't I have political freedom and freedom to education? Why must I accept the wrong education like what I have been told about the June 4th Tiananmen incident and other political events? The Chinese government controls all the information and censors everything. Only one voice is allowed. Why can't I access foreign information? All those social events have pushed me to leave China. I can't change this country, this nation, this government, but I can change myself.
我没有办法改变这个国家、这个民族或者是这个政府，但是我可以改变自己。整个中国就是一个更大的监狱。
The entire China is a big prison. The detention center is a small prison. Xinjiang is a regional prison. China is a big prison. Every Chinese is living in prison, and every Chinese is a slave of Xi Jinping.
或者说每一个中国人都是习近平的奴隶。
So how do these Chinese travelers go about their routes? They usually fly to Ecuador as their first stopover. Some would fly to Turkey first and then transfer to South America. After that, they usually take a bus to Tulcan on the Colombian border, then charter a bus to enter Colombia. After about 2 days of traveling, they arrive in Nicoli, a small coastal town in northwestern Colombia, where they pay a local guide and follow in the footsteps of Latin American stowaways. They buy a ticket for a boat ride into the Darien rainforest on the other side of the border between Colombia and Panama. After coming out of the rainforest, they then rent a car or drive themselves all the way north through several countries in Central America to reach the US-Mexico border. After climbing over the wall to sneak into the US to turn themselves in, they apply for asylum at a detention center to stay in the US. However, the route through Central America is dangerous. On March 29, 2024, the bodies of 8 Chinese were found on the beach in the Mexican state of Oaxaca, killed in an accident while being smuggled by boat to the US.
我在巴拿马热带雨林就是这样躲避匪的。
And this is how I escaped the robbers in the rainforest of Panama. I put my good cell phone here and my junk cell phone on the outside. Then I glue it tightly. I put the sleeve on, so it looks like a water bottle. Look at it, it can be separated. The small bottle can be filled with water. There is some space between. You can't tell from the surface, it looks just like a bottle, but you can put money in the space. I suggest you lay down some white toilet paper so it doesn't look dark. It looks like a water bottle. Even when the robbers see it, they won't touch it, but you can hide a lot of money.
匪看来就是个水瓶子，他摸都不带摸的这东西，这里面可以藏很多钱。
This journey has become increasingly popular in the wake of the COVID-19 outbreak. Relevant videos and groups have gained popularity on social media X and YouTube. Many people share their experiences of walking the route, even posting bits and pieces of their journeys in real time or asking for help. There are related courses on Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, live streaming from people who have walked the route. People specializing in the smuggling business, services to arrange transportation, food and lodging, equipment selling, and various consulting services. On Telegram, there are thousands of netizens who join such groups. Some have even gone on to start their own consulting business. Now this business is done through social media platforms. In the name of global travel, these people publish videos that contain the list of countries on their route and their journey through them. Then they connect in the WeChat group offline. Some sell the so-called guide, that is, where one makes stops, what kind of vehicles to get, the kind of boat to use, and how to sneak across the border, etc. This is one kind. Another kind is called the big package, that is, clients are introduced to a snakehead. It costs 300 to 350,000 yuan, or about 48,000. Imagine spending so much money to become a refugee in the US, but there are still a lot of people doing this. Non-Chinese may be confused as to why, with so many ways to get to the US, people choose to risk their lives and walk the route that's fraught with danger and uncertainty. In fact, China is decoupling from the US and the West much faster than you realize. Many people only see fewer foreigners in China and don't notice that there are fewer Chinese in the US as well. At its peak in 2016, the US issued 2.2 million visas for Chinese nationals for various purposes such as travel, family visits, study, and business. In 2023, that number dropped to 164,000, less than a tenth of what it was before. While it's not easy for the Chinese to walk the route, stowaways from China are the envy of illegal immigrants from other countries, as Chinese people have the highest rate of being granted political asylum. Immigration lawyers publish a figure of 82% success rate for Chinese, and the official US figure is 55%, much higher than that of South American countries. This is partly because most Chinese have some basic English and are willing to work. But more importantly, the Chinese government treats its people horribly, and the world knows it. For example, the Chinese people were forced to stay at home without food and can't go to the hospital during the COVID-19 lockdown. They were banned from free speech and get interrogated by the police at will. These are typical examples of political persecution and violation of human rights in the eyes of Americans. So it's easy to convince the immigration court to grant them political asylum.